Welcome back everyone. Today we will be discussing the Jordan 1 Fusion Red. Specifically, we will be discussing some release info, how to cop, and of course, as usual, some resale predictions at the end of the video. The Jordan 1 Fusion Red releases on June 12th. Retail is $170. Stock between all sizes combined worldwide is under 85,000 pairs. This is actually less than what we normally see for Jordan 1 highs, but also keep in mind that this is only men's sizes as well. So it's honestly not too big of a difference. We also already saw 5,000 pairs already released through Nike Sneakers US alone on the exclusive access drop. Regarding resale, we will cover that towards the end of the video as always, but with the release info out of the way though, let's jump into how to cop these Jordan 1 Fusion Reds. Specifically for this how to cop, we'll be going in chronological order along with exactly how to efficiently manage your time and set up for this drop, since a lot's going to be going on at once. Prior to discussing the first come first serve drops though, make sure to follow my Twitter KeithAdam10 and personals for you for any urgent updates on these, such as the exclusive access that we already saw occur. Also, as promised, I was going to keep you guys all updated on the progress for Gargantua AIO. We just had our second successful beta test. To stay updated on its progress, as well as free beta keys in the future, be sure to follow the account Gargantua_AIO. Also, please make sure that you don't forget to sign up for the Flex app reservations. As usual, this is one of the best ways to get pairs, as well as asking your local foot stores about their procedure for the leftover pairs. But now, moving on to the online first come first serve sites, we'll start with the US sites in chronological order, then we'll be going to the Europe sites afterwards. This site list is very similar to the one we discussed on the Jordan 1 Court Purple release, so this should be a good way to refresh your memory, as well as some minor updates and takeaways from the prior drop. At 8 a.m. Eastern time, as usual, we should be seeing Undefeated drop. Before this time, make sure you are signed into your Undefeated account, as it is required for checkout. Be ready to solve a checkpoint captcha as well, and if you don't have access to a Shopify monitor, you could try to refresh the search page for AJ1 High, but your chances of copying are going to be very slim, since at the end of the day, it still is a Shopify site. Now, moving on to the confirmed 10 a.m. Eastern time drops, this is where the actual fun begins as usual. Since there's a lot to focus on, I'm going to guide you and suggest to you guys how to efficiently manage your time as usual. First, I would suggest going for Hibbett. This is what I've been suggesting recently over the past at least 10 drops or so, and it's been going very well, so we won't change this up just yet. For everyone who has been asking about the press and hold loop, this is unfortunately the result of the Perimeter X bot protection. I briefly touched on this in my prior how to cop guides, including the recent Court Purple one. Essentially, in order to avoid this loop, or at least decrease it from occurring, rather than refreshing the product page right before the drop, visit the Coming Soon page under the Launches tab and click the product several seconds before 10 a.m. Eastern time. By the time it loads, you should be able to solve the first press and hold, then size will show, and you shouldn't get caught in the loop. Try to time it to the best of your abilities. Another tip from the last drop that actually occurred that I just started noticing, after you solve the press and hold loop, it's going to be very tempting to scroll down very quickly to get to the size section, because obviously you want to check out as fast as possible. However, I did notice that if you do scroll very slowly, there's a significantly lower chance of getting that press and hold loop once again. So my suggestion would have to be to take your time when scrolling down. I know it sounds lucrative, but honestly, this is how these anti-bots work. It's little variables like this that they tend to pick up. What is also really important is that you should also try to generate some activity on the website at least 20 minutes before the drop. Your goal is essentially just to emulate normal customer human behavior. My biggest advice when going for Hibbett is to use Apple Pay on your mobile device for the most efficient checkout, as I always do recommend. Or as an alternative for Hibbett as your 10 a.m. Eastern time first come first serve site, you could also choose one or two Shopify sites to focus on at exactly that time. If I had to choose two for you guys, normally I end up suggesting Shop Night's Kicks or Shoe Palace, since they get pretty high stock and they do have a checkpoint too, and you can even make early add to cart links because they load variants beforehand. However, for this drop in particular, I cannot really recommend that, similar to the Court Purple drop. The reason is due to the fact that they charge $27 for shipping, and these Fusion Reds unfortunately have a subpar margin, that of which we'll go into more depth later What you guys need to understand right now is that you probably don't want to focus on Shop Nice Kicks or Shoe Palace when it comes to these Fusion Reds or any item that doesn't exactly have the most ideal margin. Instead, if you still prefer not to go for Hibbett, then I'd suggest going for Jimmy Jazz and DTLR, since they do get high stock and they do have a checkpoint as well. Also, just a quick note, Jimmy Jazz has actually been loading early links as of lately, and some of you may have already seen this on my recent tweeted site list. I normally would also suggest going for Kith, but recently some Shopify bots have found an exploit for the H-CAPTCHA that Kith uses, which makes manual literally impossible there now since the checkouts are instant. As I predicted last week though, it seems that Shopify has now implemented a patch for this, but I won't be surprised if there is another exploit for this H-CAPTCHA, so honestly, it's just not worth the risk. You do have other options, don't focus on Kith. In conclusion, your 10 a.m. first come first serve site should be on Hibbett, or if you could multitask or you don't prefer to go for Hibbett, then try for DTLR and Jimmy Jazz too. And remember, Jimmy Jazz links should load early, and that will be in my tweeted site list. For DTLR, you'll have to use the search page if you go for them. Now, right after those first come first serve drops are over, or even while you're waiting in the Shopify queue still, I want you guys to enter in as many sneakers accounts into the drop as possible until around 10:10 a.m. Eastern time. This is going to be your number one chance by far for copying these as usual. But now, what's the most efficient way to cop off of Nike sneakers manually? So these are currently loaded as a Dan drop, which they have been doing much more frequently as of recently. Dan drops are also known as draws. You essentially have just 10 minutes to enter in as many of your accounts into the raffle as possible. Evidently, the more you could enter within that period of time, the better your chances will be. I actually made a full in-depth video, which I'd highly suggest watching, where I go in-depth to this because there is a lot more to it. If you guys need to make more accounts, remember, Nike does require SMS verification for each account, and you can't use the same phone number twice, so you're going to have to ask a friend of yours to use their phone number and ask them for the verification code. However, as I usually do suggest, if you'd rather not bother your friends, or you just want a significant amount of pre-verified Nike sneakers accounts in general, feel free to check out my site TARS. The link for that is in the description below for pre-verified Nike sneakers or Adidas accounts. Now, after Nike sneakers, it'll be 10:10 a.m. Eastern time. You'll now want to shift your focus onto foot sites and periodically checking Finish Line and JD Sports. Snipes will also most likely drop. However, as of now, they still have not loaded them up. I do expect them to, and you'll see that on my tweeted site list if they do. As of now, for Finish Line and JD Sports, make sure to set up the tabs for these sites beforehand. You should set them up as soon as you see my account or Personals for You tweet out the links. This way, you're already set up and ready to go after the first come first serve drops and after Nike sneakers. The key to copying on foot sites, which is Foot Locker, Foot Action, Champs, Eastbay, and normally Kids Foot Locker, but not for this drop obviously, is persistency, not exactly speed. However, as of the last half a year or so, manual has now changed from very difficult to nearly impossible. This is something we've discussed already too, and this is because they recently switched from Akamai to Datadome, which has made manual much more difficult. Regardless, it is worth trying at this time anyway, since there isn't much else going on after the Nike sneakers drop ends. Now, as for Finish Line and JD Sports, and if Snipes hypothetically does end up loading, as you're trying to cart on foot sites, just periodically keep checking your tabs to see if you have pass queue, and when you do pass queue, it's pretty self-explanatory from there. Just try to add to cart and check out. So that'll conclude it for the US sites. So now moving on to the Europe sites. Although many Europe retailers, as usual, do tend to do raffles, there still are some first come first serve drops that you could try for. The best drop for Europe would definitely be obviously Nike sneakers at 9 a.m. CEST. They are currently loaded as a Dan drop as well, just like the United States. Since this is a draw, you won't need to prioritize this site at exactly 9 a.m. CEST. Instead, I would suggest focusing on a first come first serve site of your choice, then coming back to sneakers right after. It is extremely likely that Soulbox and Snipes will also be dropping, both at around 9 a.m. CEST, sometimes not on the dot. If you do have access to a Soulbox monitor or a Snipes monitor, you will definitely have a decent chance at copy manually there. If not, I would suggest following more sneakers on Twitter, because they usually do tweet out relatively quickly. I would also suggest making accounts beforehand, obviously, and already being signed in, so you could save some steps. Similar to Hibbett, you should also try to generate some activity on the site beforehand to reduce that perimeter X captcha loop, because Unfortunately, both Snipes and Soulbox do use Perimeter X, just like Hibbett does. Now, Zalando, Courier, and Snipe should also be dropping, although they're not loaded just yet. Just a quick note for Zalando that I did want to add, which is rather important. Unfortunately, they did clip a lot of accounts, especially new accounts that have no orders on them. Some you could cart products off of, some you can't. You could actually test this out by just going to a Jordan 1 mid and seeing if your account lets you cart, and if it doesn't, that means your account is not one of the ones that is a cartable account. And now all these accounts that you are able to cart with are actually gaining some value. So be sure to check your accounts beforehand before you actually put in some time focusing on Zalando. Then Offspring may also potentially drop too. For Offspring, I would suggest enabling post notifications for their Instagram if you don't have access to a monitor. They're relatively fast at sending it out when it does go live. They normally don't drop at 9 a.m. whenever they do, so there's no real need to focus on there at 9 either, since it's usually at a later time. Foot Locker will also be dropping these. Just try to use multiple Chrome users to pass the queue and add to cart. It's going to be very tedious, very similar to foot sites in US. Manual is going to be near impossible. Foot Locker will probably be the worst drop as usual. Just leave tabs open and hope you do get through, and maybe you could cart. And again, Foot Locker is a queue release, and again with Foot Locker, just like US, you don't need to focus on this site at exactly 9 a.m. CEST since it doesn't sell out instantly. That will be it for the How to Cop portion of the video though. Now with the How to Cop out of the way, let's discuss the resale predictions. So as mentioned earlier, the current stock on these is a little below usual level, but not too significant considering this is only for men's sizes, and it's still technically around the average. More importantly, it appears that demand on these is quite low for a Jordan 1 High, unfortunately. Bids are lower than usual for Jordan 1 High. Sell volume is okay, granted that we are about a week out from the drop still, but that's primarily because pre-sale is quite low already too. Overall, I'm not expecting these to be a great cop. However, there still should be a little bit of easy money to be made in all sizes. With tax or with the Europe retail, you should be able to make a little bit of lunch money with a poor margin, unlike the recent Core Purples. And if you don't have tax and you're in the United States, you should be able to make a little more than that with a decent margin. Still not a great overall cop though. It's just easy money that will add up. But still, it's easy money and it's going to add up. I love drops like this. Overall, despite the relatively low profit, I'll still be going for all sizes and taking my small profit. And if I don't have tax, perhaps even slightly more than lunch money. Nothing too major though. I do expect these to perform definitely better than the Core Purples, but again, still not the best profit. I mean, I guess, what could you expect? They're McDonald's colors at the end of the day. But anyway, that will conclude it for today. Feel free to leave a like if you enjoyed, or perhaps if you learned a thing or two. Subscribe and enable post notifications just so you stay 100% updated on all hype releases. Also, feel free to check out the links in the description below for reliable, fast residential proxies and pre-verified Nike sneakers or Adidas accounts. Also, feel free to follow Endurance's Twitter for updates on restocks or key giveaways, and the same goes for Gargantua AIO if you want to keep up with the progress or even free beta key drops. Last but not least, make sure to follow Keith Adam 10 and Personals for You so you guys stay updated on all urgent info like I was discussing today. With that though, I will see you guys later. Have a fantastic rest of your day.